Welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Join us every Wednesday to learn about the latest cutting-edge developments in the real-time communications industry. ClueCon Weekly is brought to you by FreeSWITCH Solutions. Get support and professional services directly from the creators of the FreeSWITCH open source project, solving your issues in the most efficient, stable, and scalable way possible. Get the FreeSWITCH advantage. Visit freeswitch.com. Also brought to you by ClueCon, the premier technology conference for developers by developers. Join us every summer in Chicago. ClueCon kicks off on Monday with our annual hackathon, The Coder Games, followed by 3 days of technology-rich presentations discussing telecom, WebRTC, and IoT from developers around the world. To learn more, visit ClueCon.com or call 877-74-CLUE.
And welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Today is the 22nd of August, and this week we're going to be joined by Mr. Darren Schreiber from 2600 Hertz. You guys know them, the makers of Kazoo. They also do a lot of other cool services over there. Darren's been around the open source FreeSWITCH community for a long time, and he was around even before FreeSWITCH was invented. So you guys want to hang out for that. Coming up next, we're going to go over to Miss Abby for the news. Abby, how are you doing?
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on ClueCon Weekly. If you have any questions during this call, please comment in the YouTube, HipChat, or IRC channels, and we will try to answer them live during this call. If you missed ClueCon this year, or maybe you're just missing ClueCon, you can find all of our talks up on our YouTube channel right now. We have a lot of great content up on our YouTube channel, including our FreeSWITCH with Fred videos, so make sure to check it out and give us a subscribe. FreeSWITCH is going on the road. You can catch us at AstraCon and the IIT RTC conference coming up pretty soon this October. FreeSWITCH Solutions is also now offering live virtual training. You can learn basic FreeSWITCH operations from the comfort of your own home or office. Our next training is on September 13th, so make sure to go to our website to sign up for that. And as usual, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on LinkedIn, and sign up for a mailing list to get these and even more fantastic news and announcements from the FreeSWITCH team. Bye, everybody!
All right, thank you very much, Miss Abby. Now, let's jump over to Mr. Michael Malvarutis for Community Corner. Mike, how you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you for everyone coming in today. We have a question from just this morning from the FreeSWITCH users mailing list, and the question is from Suryed Boomstra, and he says, "Hi all, I'm struggling with multiple diversion headers. In our case, we have an incoming call with multiple diversion headers. We do some processing and want to add diversion headers outside to the outgoing call. What I found so far is that for inbound calls, one needs to set the profile parameter, parse all invite headers equals true. This results in a SIP-I diversion variable that uses the array syntax and has all of the values I want. So far, so good." And then he's added an example. For the outbound calls, it's more difficult. I cannot get FreeSWITCH to produce multiple diversion headers. The only syntax I found is using commas in the value like this. This results in single diversion headers with the contents put in. From the RFCs, I understand that it's technically the equivalent to 4, in my case, diversion headers. Is this true? Is there a way I can convince FreeSWITCH to generate multiple separate diversion headers? And so to answer this call, we have Mike Jarris.
All right, so complicated scenario. Let's break it down a little bit. On the inbound side, I think you're on the right track. The one gotcha is there is a little bit more complicated scenario that you can get with diversion headers where you have either multiple headers or a single header or even multiple headers with the commas in them. So in the parsing of that, you'll get the array, but you may have some with commas in between them too, so you need to handle that. On the outbound side, you are on the right track. There isn't a way currently to add multiple headers, but you are absolutely correct. In SIP, in all cases, multiple of the same header is technically equivalent to a single header with the comma separation. Outside of when FreeSWITCH had a bug in this many years ago, I've never seen a client that didn't properly support this. So I have pretty strong confidence that that will work properly. If you run into one, we should absolutely address that. I think it is technically possible for us to do something like where you would do with array syntax, where it would work. It isn't there today. But the single header with the comma separation should work perfectly and should resolve your issue. It's a pretty interesting edge of the SIP RFCs, which not very many people know, and I think it's fascinating and interesting. So I really like it.
I was gonna, because earlier we were talking about which RFC does this specifically entail, and so this is just for the RFC is specifically just for diversion headers, or
No,
other headers as well?
This is down in 3261. It's true for all SIP header types.
Oh, okay.
So anything that you can do multiple headers, it is technically equivalent to have a single header with each header kind of strung together with commas.
Answers from the experts.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
And so today we have Darren Schreiber, the founder from 2600 Hertz, who's going to do a presentation on his platform. But also we're going to do a lot of mobile work today too, which is integrated, but it's going to be predominantly a focus on mobile. And so I love mobile. Everyone loves mobile, right? The future is mobile.
True. Thanks, Michael. How's it going?
Good. Thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, thanks for having
It's
me.
always good to talk to you. Yeah.
I love coming on, and I love also watching, and sometimes I get too darn busy to watch, and then I got, as Ken was pointing out yesterday when I was chatting, 500 episodes to go back through and watch. So thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be here.
Don't if you're gonna go watch all the episodes, don't do it all at once.
Fair point.
You got the people that binge Netflix seasons.
ClueCon weekly.
And yeah, it's not recommended to binge ClueCon weekly because you will die. No food and water in between is not good for you.
Not bad.
Too many episodes.
All right, so do you want me to get started, or how do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so yeah, my name is Darren Schreiber. I'm one of the co-founders here at 2600 Hertz. We got our start actually working with the FreeSWITCH team on an old product that we used to call Blue Box, and as Ken joked yesterday as well, it's been through some iterations. It was Blue Box, then it was Whistle, and now it's Kazoo. So Kazoo is kind of stuck for the last 8 or 9 years. Hopefully you guys can see and hear me okay, because my screen is jumping around a little here.
Wait, so was mod, what's it, mod dial plan asterisk created for Blue Box?
No, God, no! Don't say such things. No, that was I don't know if Mike wants to chime in or Ken. I think that was Tony's teaser, and also originally I think there was some consideration in making asterisks compatible with
Actually,
compatible, but that was quickly abandoned.
yeah, actually, I can comment on that real quick. That was actually designed as an example of the different formats of dial plan that you can actually do. So you can write your own dial plan module fairly straightforward. So that's really just a demo module.
Yeah. So no, that had nothing to do with us. We do have a module in there called Mod Kazoo, and that allows us to use Erlang, which is the programming language we generally build our software on, to tie directly into FreeSWITCH. It streams events. It sends commands back in. It actually kind of takes over the dial plan processing. But
because it uses Erlang, it's very highly performant, right?
Yeah,
the concurrency, all that stuff.
Yep.
That's impressive stuff. That's impressive stuff.
It's good stuff. We actually take advantage of somebody committed the mod AMQP module as well. So we've taken bits from that. that allow us to stream events directly to a messaging bus. So that's been pretty useful as well for distributing systems all across the universe here, and letting them all talk to each other. But the main thing we wanted to discuss today is something that actually allows anyone in the FreeSWITCH community, even people who are not using our software, to tap into something that I've always thought was pretty cool. Some of you know about this project. We started it several years ago. In the last couple of years, it's really become pretty rock solid in terms of how it functions. So we're trying to get more and more people using it as much as possible, either for hobby purposes or for business or for kind of the main thing we wanted to discuss today is that piece is our Mvno integration that we have, where the back end is actually Sprint's network on the towers. Some years ago, we set up an agreement with Sprint to buy service from them wholesale, basically, and have the rights to white label it and resell it, and also allow our partners to white label it as well. And so what that lets people basically do is basically real time take control of this little device, your cell phone. So basically you can real time activate SIM cards. You actually become the carrier, so you get charged wholesale rates, and then you can choose to mark those up or flat rate services to your customers and then keep the difference if you want. But more fun and related to FreeSWITCH, you can take the phone calls that go to and from the phone on its native dialer and its native phone number, and you can reroute those to your FreeSWITCH box. So basically, cool. Is anything that I dial on the native dialer on this phone, on the standard keypad that I'm sure you all are used to, and I don't know if that's actually going to show up on the webcam. But this dialer doesn't need an app. You don't need to download anything. You basically can dial things like 4-digit extensions, and it's going to ring, a desk phone. You can route your international calls over VoIP minutes, which are much cheaper than using a regular, cell phone rate plan. You can do things like activate feature codes. You can change the caller ID. One of the most popular things people have been using this for is to differentiate your outbound calls so that the caller ID shows up either with a work number or a personal number. So you can kind of have two phone numbers on your phone at the same time. As the networks themselves are upgrading as well to support voice and data at the same time, people are starting to pair this with the ability to have multiple phone numbers on the same cell phone and overlay contextual information about the calls. So things like whether it's a work call or a personal call and who is calling, adding caller ID name. Even some folks are toying with CRM integrations where like an inbound call does bring up an app that's on the phone, but it's actually triggered by push notifications on the server side, and everything is self-contained. And then if you know it's a work call, it'll automatically record it and store it in your CRM. It does all that natively on the network side.
So Darren, essentially what's happening here is you're totally in the call flow.
Yep, that's right. So every single call, so normally your phone call would go from this cellular device to a cell tower. It'd go from a cell tower to Sprint's IMS core backend, and from there they would send it to the PSTN. In our scenario, it goes from this cell phone to the cell tower, and then to the IMS core, and then to us. In fact, you can technically, for bank and financial purposes, and even some government and military purposes and fire and police, you can actually keep the call off of the PSTN completely if you want, because Sprint's network, we're directly tied into it. So none of that is going over the internet. All of it is direct through MPLS connections or actually cross connects in the same building. So in a couple of locations, we plug right into Sprint's gear. So
that's an unbelievably powerful thing.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It really is, because I mean, when you were just listing features, it's not really the features that are there. It's you can do anything.
Yeah. One of my favorite things, which I didn't have time to put together for this demo today, but we have a funny little feature that uses mod sound touch. I think it is the module where you can like change people's voices natively, so you can make yourself sound like a chipmunk. Like you can, have transcription live decoding while you're talking. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. You have full control of the RTP stream. You have full control of the signaling. And you can even kind of interpret some of the error messages you get from the Sprint network to mean things like a phone is offline or out of range. So you can actually have simul ring strategies where, let's say, it defaults to your cell phone first, but if the cell phone is out of area, then you would ring a desk phone or a SIP client. But if it is in the area and you just didn't answer, then it would voicemail. So you can make decisions based on some of the feedback that the switches on their network give to kind of manipulate the system even further and add intelligence that kind of doesn't exist anywhere else that I know of anyway. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
So there's a big differentiator here, because a lot of the other MVNOs that are out there, they're not in the call flow.
Correct.
They're just
huge difference.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like it's very hard in the US to be in the call flows.
Yep.
Because for the most part, the mobile companies just don't want to allow it.
That's right. And one of the only companies I know who successfully utilized this was the Republic Wireless service. But they were doing it solely, I think, to really save money and terminate the calls on the VoIP circuits that used to be part of Bandwidth's network. I don't know that they were really allowing you to route it to a SIP URI, right? So in our system, you can literally say, hey, every time someone dials a number on this phone, route it to my FreeSWITCH box at home at IP address 4.5.6.7. And I don't really know of any other service that lets you do that at this point. There was a service back in the day. Actually, I think one of those members is now part of the FreeSWITCH team that used to let you do that. But I believe that service is no longer in existence. So I think we're the only one still standing who's playing with this technology. There used to be some, and it hasn't been.
No, it's still around. What happened was the assets got sold to Ting.
Ah, got it. Interesting. Okay. Well, so I know of the trials and tribulations that at least I know some of them that probably were involved in all that. It has not been a simple thing to get this going. There's about a 6 to 12 month ramp up just for contracts and meetings. Sprint has a lot of meetings, so you have to do a lot of coordination. It's actually, technically speaking, on the Sprint network, I think it's 4 different products that we buy from them. We buy a data connection to their network. We buy a wholesale contract to rent time basically on the cell towers, and then we buy the integration component, which allows the cell tower to translate back into SIP and then use the data connection. And then I think we have a contract for streaming and billing data live so that we can actually see your usage as it's happening.
That's really important, because that basically that's your saving grace, to make sure that
Correct.
Customer accounts are all on par. Real-time billing is everything.
That's right. So I can show how this has kind of evolved on. We actually have a live portal now that's been built. It's fairly mature, and we have a gentleman here named Max who has been working really hard on making this thing pretty rock solid. And actually, I think he's gotten a little bored because it's working so well that I don't throw a lot of stuff his way anymore. So it's time to get some more usage on it, so we can generate some more bugs for him to do. So I'm going to kind of show it off if that's okay. I think you can screencast this, right? See, okay, sweet. So this interface that you're seeing here is what is called our Kazoo interface. This is the software platform that we typically we basically sell to customers, or it's also open source, so you can download the basis of this interface you're seeing here. It's basically a multi-tenant platform for PBX services and conference services and whatnot. It's based on FreeSWITCH and Camillio, but through this tool, even if you don't use this tool, this is where you would manage your cell phones. So you could use this as just an administrative portal. And basically what you would do is you would go into the mobile services application here. So we offer a bunch of different apps. This particular one that I'm showing you is just the mobile services system. And this is actually our corporate account. This is the one that we use internally in our office. And you can see that there's some interesting information, such as how much data we've used this month company-wide. You can see on individual cell phones how much data somebody's used. This guy here is actually an ex-employee. He doesn't work here anymore, but he's still a good friend of mine. So I let him keep his cell phone with us. And then he started watching videos all day long. So we capped his data, which is one of the things you can do. I'm going to demo that in this session here. You can see that there's little graphs that show whether you're approaching, green, yellow, red in terms of your usage. Some people have unlimited. And basically, you can go in.
And there's everyone's phone number too.
Yeah, that's okay. If you want to give them a call, I'm sure they'll say hi. So basically, you can go in here and you can. Actually, I'll go into a different one here. So you can go in here and you can basically see things like what kind of handset it is. You can see the model number of the handset. You can see the electronic serial number. You can actually enable and disable certain features, like whether or not they're allowed to use the built-in mobile hotspot that's on many phones, or whether they're allowed to use SMS and MMS services. You can limit their data usage, so you can say this person only gets 3 gigs of data, and actually when they get close to 2 gigs of data, we're going to slow them down a little bit so that they hopefully still get data the rest of the month, but they stop watching videos or something like that. So try to handle the behaviors that we see sometimes when people are using a bit more than most people do. You get usage history, which just shows you generically where the phone's been used or what amounts of data the phone has used. And then this is the fun part for FreeSWITCH folks. This right here really turns your mobile phone into a SIP phone. So basically what this lets you do is type in, my FreeSWITCHbox.com or an IP address. And then you can put in FreeSWITCH credentials you would normally put into a phone. So like 1005 and a password. And every time you make a call on your cell phone, it's actually going to send the username and password in the invite with the auth credentials as if it was a SIP phone making the call. And it's going to route it to your FreeSWITCH box via DNS or via an IP address. So what that actually lets you do is, dial a call, and you'll see it hit your FreeSWITCH box. And then, referring Michael to the manipulation you were talking about, you can then do whatever you want with that, right? You'll know that it came from our IP address, so you'll know that it's a call from the mobile phone. We put a little indicator. It actually uses a different IP address from us if it's an inbound call from the network. But if it's from the mobile phone, it'll come on a specific IP, and then it'll have this user information that you've entered in here. And then you can choose to route it to the PSTN. You can route it to other desk phones. You can play chipmunks. You can pretty much do whatever you like. So this gives you basically 100% of the control of the call path. And then you also have control over things that are typically annoying, like you spill something on your cell phone or you drop it like I tend to do, and you need to replace it with a new one. This will let you swap the number around. The phone around to a new phone. And then all these things are kind of available on an account level as well. So we actually built this so that you really were, we treated this as if you were selling this service to a corporation. So you can basically sell like a data bucket. So you go to a corporation and say, I'm going to give you as many phones as you want, but you only get 50 gigs across all the phones. And then all of them will be collectively limited. And then if you know that there's a couple particular people that should be limited more than others, you can manage the individual phones. So hopefully that makes sense.
And all this is actually performed by an integration between you and Sprint.
Correct. Sprint doesn't actually offer things like setting limits, for example. They just give us a feed. So there's back-end tools now on our side that, for example, as we get that stream of billing and we see that X amount of data has been used, then we'll trigger an update to their network asking them to throttle the data connection. There's actually even a feature that we didn't sign up for, but we can still, so that all the data flows between us and the phone as well. So that if you wanted to, say, integrate this with like a corporate VPN, or a corporate firewall, so you wanted to like issue cell phones to bank users, but you wanted to make sure that all their data creepily went through your corporate firewall without them having to load an app. You could do that as well, and then we would route all the data traffic to us, and then we'd route it to your corporate network.
There's a lot of compliance coming into the U.S. from a banking perspective, where this stuff is required or going to be required soon. I know in the EU, it's a huge thing. Those requirements have been there for a while.
That's right, and there's nothing stopping us from taking the software that runs this and repeating this in the EU. So, like, all we need is an Mvno contract and these, to pay to tie into the IMS core on their side with a device that turns it into SIP, and basically we're good to go. So we actually built this to support multiple carriers. On the back end, it doesn't just support Sprint. Unfortunately, a lot of the carriers kind of have a walled garden, so they don't show as much, or they don't.
That's what I'm saying. The people now that are going for MVNOs, they're so restricted in what they can and can't do, and they'll never allow the call flows. But even getting like, you're not getting diameter access.
That's right.
Just the very basic diameter access, which is required for a lot of base functionality, they won't even issue anymore. They say, oh, we've got our APIs now. You have to use the APIs.
Yep, I agree. And the APIs, unfortunately, we're supposed to open them more up, but like even we tried to do a partnership with AT&T, and the APIs were actually restrictive. There were a lot of challenges using them to kind of do a wholesale service, because I guess they probably don't want us to pick away at their core base users. So they're very protective of that. So this is kind of cool that we can do this with Sprint. Frankly, my personal opinion is Sprint used to need the subscribers, so they made this much easier to get signed up with. It's a little harder now. Their network used to be kind of challenging, frankly, to utilize. The network is pretty awesome, actually, at this point. I think it's a combination of they upgraded everything and there's just not as many people on it because they used to have such a bad reputation.
So what challenges did you have back in the day when you first started working with them?
So they tried to roll out WiMAX here. This was quite back in the day, which ended up being a dying technology. And it was really good, but everywhere that it wasn't, my phone almost didn't even work. Like on my train ride home, I would completely lose signal twice in the exact same point, and nobody else would have that problem. I couldn't keep a phone call up driving down the 101 in California. I barely had 3G service when I'd go to Chicago. It was pretty challenging. At this point, it's the reverse. I go to a lot of events, like music events, where there's crowds of people, and those tend to clog up the cell towers and the frequencies. And it's kind of funny now. I'm always the one who has a working cell phone, and nobody else's phone works, and in those kind of areas. So I know that Sprint has told us we're in a lot of communication with them that they've been doing these upgrades, but we've actually been seeing it. At this point, I travel a lot, and the only two places my phone usually is a problem is outskirts of Lake Tahoe and the Gorge, Washington, which is in the middle of nowhere. And nobody else's phones really work that well there either. So it's they've been running these ads that their coverage is pretty similar to others. And I think a lot of people are not aware that most cell phone companies now outsource the placement and management of their towers to a company named American Tower. Because if you think about a cell tower, what is it really? It's a bunch of computers on a roof, and you got to call the landlord and negotiate to get power and space up there and pay them rent. And so most of the cell carriers decided not to do this in many areas themselves. And so you end up with differences in frequencies used and differences in equipment, but the actual cell tower placement is pretty similar now between the different carriers. So the coverage,
and they say the differential from the networks is only like 1 or 2%, right?
That's right. And so the big difference you're going to now perceive as a consumer is usually based on the frequencies that they're using, because those are auctioned off and they're expensive, but they also dictate how much capacity basically on the higher end you can get, and on the lower end how much it penetrates walls and other structures, so that you can get a signal in a building. Sprint used to operate at one of the highest frequencies there was, so it was really hard to get good service inside a building. When they bought Nextel, they finally reused that frequency that was much lower for your cell phone, so we don't really have that problem anymore. And they've always owned a large amount of the higher end frequency for high bandwidth, but their cell towers needed serious upgrades to utilize it, and they've been doing that as well. So the network's good. This technology is kind of cool. We don't really have problems with drops or outages very frequently anymore. They've gotten, also one of the other big things is there used to be a walled garden around the handsets. You couldn't go and just buy a handset from Apple and then bring it to Sprint, right? You used to have to buy your handset from the cell provider. And we can all thank Google for kind of messing that up. When Google wanted to announce a cell phone, they lobbied the FCC to make it so that carriers could no longer restrict you from bringing an unlocked phone to the network if it was compatible. And because of that ruling, all these exclusivity deals kind of went out the window. There's still some occasionally, but it's usually a push by the manufacturer to get a lot of phones out there. It's not the big guys are selling it direct, right? So you can go to an Apple store and buy a phone that's just unlocked now, kind of like you can do in Europe. And same with Samsung, you can just buy it on their website. So when we started this project, you couldn't do those things. So we could only allow you to bring 1 year old or older phones, which nobody wanted to do. Today, you can literally, why don't I show you? You can literally get a brand new cell phone. This is not a brand new cell phone, but you could walk in and get a Samsung S9. Like, for example, I have an S9 that I use on the 2600 hertz mobile network. And you can just pop a SIM card into it and then go into the screen and activate it. Why don't we do a quick little demo of that? So basically, if you took a used phone or a new phone with the requirement being that it doesn't have any financial obligations still to Sprint. Sprint keeps a database, and if you haven't paid your bills, then they're not going to let you activate the phone. But if it's a paid-off phone, basically you can go into, if you go into the cell phone, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but if you go into the settings screen, yeah, you can't see that way. If you go into the settings screen and you go into the About screen under General usually, where there should be what is called an MEID, which is your basically mobile phone's identification number. And basically what you do is you punch that into our interface. So 35697 606 066 3375. Hopefully I got the right number. Oh, no 5 at the end. And you click validate. And this actually checks Sprint's backend servers and makes sure that the phone is not locked or has some financial problem. In this case, we're good. So the next thing you can do is make sure that the place you're activating it has coverage. So you can check that. It's invalid zip code. And it should tell you whether there's coverage in the area. We look good here. So Sprint still operates really 2 separate networks, the CDMA, which is the old 3G network, and voice network, and then the LTE network. So happy with the coverage levels. It'll show different level bars if you're in the outskirts of an area of coverage. So in this case, we're good, and then we'll proceed. I'm going to name the device. We'll do ClueCon Fun Demo, and then you also have a SIM card in these phones, so you have to put in the SIM card number.
And so you can put it in an eSIM as well. I mean, it's just essentially the same thing.
Well, so Sprint does keep a database of the valid SIMs. I don't think they'll let you bring in a random SIM. It has to be added to their database. Now, they do give us some tools to add stuff to the database. We've never played with them, to be honest, so we could try and expose those and see how much creativity we can bring with that. Today, we don't show those APIs, but we do have some power around that to play with it a little bit. So if anyone had some fun ones to play with, we could try it. We asked them about the eSIMs. They don't seem very excited about having multiple carriers on their phones from the sounds of it. So I don't know how much of a real thing that's going to be. But we'll see. But I'm not going to live activate this device. So again, I'll show this on the screen. This phone only is showing 3G service right now. Probably can't see that too well, but shows that it's on Sprint, but it's showing 3G. And on my computer screen, you can see that it's successfully activated and it's gotten a new phone number. So if we actually now give the phone a minute, or we go into the phone's built-in.
So what's the SPID? What's the SPID on that phone number? Is that phone number actually a Sprint number, or is that phone number like
it'll actually show up as
enabled number
of 2600 hertz, which sits underneath Sprint's SPID? You can have a sub, like an eSPID underneath. That's a subsidiary or a separate entity from Sprint. Sprint issues it, but it will show up in the database as us.
But it is, so from like a net number perspective, it would be
our
eSPID. It would be wireless as opposed to
that's a real
VoIP enabled.
Yep, that is correct. In fact, we could probably try it. Does anyone have a good lookup tool for that? I don't have one handy.
Yeah, I can look it up. Here, wait.
So we could try and look up this number and see what it comes up as.
It comes up as Sprint Spectrum.
Okay, so the number comes up as Sprint, but what if you do the SPID lookup, like on a mobile computer?
Wait. I'll do it and an ID lookup.
All right. So in the meantime, while you're doing that, I could reboot the phone, or you basically sometimes have to trigger the phone to check in with the cell tower to realize that there's an over-the-air activation update. So I'm doing that, and if all goes well in just a second, I think I can actually reset the mobile part. Yeah, so reset network settings, and the phone's gonna reboot. See it rebooting now, and we'll give it a minute. And basically, this is gonna fire up. It's gonna check in with the network. The network's gonna say, "Oh, I recognize this ID for this phone. It's got a new phone number and a new over-the-air profile." It's gonna push to the phone, and then basically the phone will be active. And then if I go into that off-net tab on this new phone, the call will actually route to a FreeSWITCH server. If somebody's got a FreeSWITCH server, you could try and make that happen here if you want. I don't know how quick somebody can wire up an inbound call ACL here. While that's loading, I'm just going to go back to the screen that shows all the device info. So we'll go to the ClueCon. And there's a couple things you'll notice in the activation. I never told it what kind of phone it is, but it figured it out anyway. So it knows it's an Apple phone. You can see that it's an iPhone 6, 64 gig or whatever. You can see that it's got this 415 number on it, and then it downloads a couple other ID numbers that Sprint uses to identify the phone. So those are all exposed here. One of the most interesting things that this shows, that's funny, it doesn't show it on this model, is what's called an Msl number. An MSL is, if you've ever found those secret codes on your phone that let you configure more advanced settings for the carrier, but they require a PIN code that you usually have to call the carrier for, we actually show you that. So we give you that code. So if you've ever wanted to change the proxy that the SMS and MMS messages go through, or you've wanted to change the class of service that the phone tries to register with, you can do all those things with the MSL code. It'll actually show up.
Okay, so I did two different lookups, and this is really interesting. I did a net number ID lookup which showed blank, because it's not with net number. But the other thing is I did it's a mobile number, and so it's showing up as MNC 120.
You don't know what that is. Got to be some
mobile network code. It's one of Sprint's. It's one of Sprint's for sure, and then the name is Sprint Spectrum LP. But the type is it definitely is mobile. So that's really cool. That's really neat. And then the country code's 310, which North America, US, I guess.
Yep, that's right. So yeah, I mean it's pretty fun stuff to work with.
Yeah, you can see it right in the IMSI. So if you look at the IMSI right there, it's 310.120. So it's prefixed with that.
Oh, that's interesting. Sec here. So we've been joking about dangerous demos all day today, and yesterday. The phone that I'm demoing, Ken specifically literally told me to check this yesterday, and I forgot. The battery's dead. So I can't show you it working yet. Miriam's going to try and bring me a cable, hopefully, here. But when this phone boots back up, I hear you laughing in the background there, Ken. I'll be able to dial on this phone and show you that the number's been pushed to it. And then you can see the packets go through. So I'll bring up the terminal window for our mobile test server, and then you'll actually be able to see the SIP calls coming in and going out. Oh, and here's Miriam with it. No, I need the cell phone power. Yeah. So, it's a good thing I'm not on stage at like an Apple event or something. Microsoft with a blue screen of death, right? Yes. Thank you so much.
At an Apple event would be absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I know, right? All right. So now we got some power back to the phone, and we can finish the demo. Dangerous demos. If you've ever been to ClueCon, which I highly recommend you go to, it's one of my favorite events every year. This is actually the first year I think I've ever missed it since I started going. There's always this section called Dangerous Demos, and we try to do a dangerous demo, and there's about a 50% chance that a live demo on stage actually works. So I guess it's not that much different on a web-based demo either here. All right, so while that's powering up, a couple other interesting things. We do actually have a built-in billing system to this with ledger capabilities. So for example, if we go into our control panel here and we go over to usage charges, the system will actually let you track mobile data. So you can see that like our system is configured to, and there you go. Of course, it came right up as soon as I plugged it in. So if you were looking before at the screen I was trying to show, I don't know if you can see it remotely up there, but it said Sprint 3G and it was not able to connect to the LTE network. If you look really closely on my video there, you can see it's now on the LTE network. So I know my box is in the corner of the screen there, but that tells me already that it's authenticating. And then if I pop into the iPhone's phone screen, and I ask what is my phone number, you'll see that it now has the new phone number on there as well. So yeah, there you go. We've activated a phone. And so the next step then would be to try and make a call and see it go through. So let's see if we can do that. So what I'll do here, I'm not sure if I'll be able to show the FreeSWITCH terminal, but let's try it. I'm going to share a different screen in a sec, Ken, if that's possible. Sure this goes through. So I'm dialing 8888 from the, there it is. Ken, I'm going to reshare this. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Share the full screen, and then we'll share, that way I'll be able to get my terminal window in here. See that terminal window now. Is that showing up?
Hold on 1 second. There we go.
So for
Awesome.
Sprint
Well,
has
my phone dialer here, I'm going to go ahead and just dial for kicks. This won't go anywhere, but I'll dial 8888 and hit send. And you can see the call is coming in here on the FreeSWITCH box. It's actually not going to route anywhere. But what's most important is you'll see Sprint actually prefixes these calls. So for some reason they chose 467, so we get a prefix at the beginning, and then we see whatever it is you dialed on the cell phone. And we can then map that and route that to wherever I want. In fact, we call the SIP interface to customer, because that is the RTP path and the SIP path that goes to the customer, so that we can track the differences between the calls. Just as another example, I'll dial something that actually should work. We'll just dial 800-555-1212 here on the cell phone. We should go through. There you go. And you can see it's been answered, right? And there's audio on the call. And if I wanted to play with this, I could do like a UUID broadcast and inject audio into the call while the call's running. And then have a good audio file handy. Just do Star Wars MP3 or something. I can grab a Star Wars MP3. Tony usually uses that as an example. We'll just grab that real quick.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Grab this. Assuming it'll let me download that. And then let's see if this works. So we'll go ahead and call a toll-free number again. See it dialing on the screen here. All right. You'll hear audio in a second when it answers. So you got free 411. And now I'm going to inject some audio into... I'm not hearing it, but I think that's the sound file I picked. Let's see.
It could be. Is there a correct UUID too?
Now, go ahead and say which one you would like.
It's really quiet in the background, so you won't be able to hear it. But it's playing Star Wars.
But the thing is, I mean, that it's a perfect way to show. Like it's in the call flow. That's what's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And
being in the
Yep. And so you can basically just route this to your own FreeSWITCH server, and then away you go. You can play with whatever you want. So oops, I'm gonna keep getting Luis on there. So basically, all that was done from that interface I was showing, and the interface will let you manage the phone. It'll let you manage the data usage. It'll let you see the billing information in real time. You can stream that stuff through API. Like, we tried to make it as open as we could so that people in the FreeSWITCH community, even in the Asterisk community, even people who use BroadSoft, like anybody who's out there using a VoIP switch, the reality is it was like several years of pain and suffering to get this all working. And so rather than everybody go and keep doing that, the theory was if we just made this really easy for people to access, then hopefully they would utilize it. We actually barely even mark up the rates. So the rates we get from Sprint are pretty darn close. We add some operational costs for bandwidth charges, and we pay a port fee to have the equipment there. Our main business is really selling PBX and hosted phone and communication systems. So we actually don't need to mark this up. Like, it's not our core competency. So it's I've always kind of called it a little bit of a toy. I would like it to evolve as more than a toy. And the other big
It's a
thing
major toy.
that we've been getting a lot of requests for actually is some people just want the data part, and that's fine. They just want to use it for backup internet. You have to tether it somehow. There's no MiFi devices that Sprint currently ships that can be used with this yet, but there's a company named Cradlepoint who's been working to get an LTE certified Sprint device. One of the problems is a lot of the devices did get certified, but for the WiMAX network on the MiFi stuff for backup internet. And since that network doesn't exist anymore, you can't use any of those adapters. So we're hoping that like a new series of LTE-based devices come out that basically you just plug usually a USB stick into some of these Netgear routers or these Cisco home routers and whatever, and there's your backup internet. So now effectively you can do backup internet, you can do your phone, you can do a smartphone, you can do a MiFi as well if you want. That you certainly can do, like a little wireless hotspot. You can hook those up and activate those here. And if Sprint starts doing this 5G broadband stuff, I suspect that we'll have access to do that as well. So it's pretty well positioned in terms of allowing people to have the control over the network that I think they haven't had before, and it's kind of cool.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
So hopefully people are interested by this and want to play with it. And that is pretty much what we wanted to show today on the mobile side. So I don't know if there's other questions. I'm not on the IRC chat, but I'm sure that there's folks chattering in there. Do
we have any questions from the audience?
I don't see any at this time. I do got a question for you, though, Darren.
Yep.
So you mentioned earlier that Sprint likes to have a lot of meetings, and it took you guys quite a while to get this all set up. On a scale of like 1 to 10 for difficulty, 10 being like, oh my God, I want to, lose my mind here. How bad would you rate the process overall in getting set up for that?
I don't know that I'd use the word bad. What we learned is that what we were doing was actually somewhat unusual. So because it's actually the combination of 4 different products, and we went into it thinking it was one product, we were always surprised that we would finish with one group. And then it'd be like, okay, now we're on to the next group. And we were like, wait, what? We thought we were done. So it was more that they're not going to give you a roadmap of how to do this because they don't do it often enough for them to even have one. And they don't know to tell you that because they don't really understand what you're doing until you're halfway through the process. And they're like, oh, now we understand what you're doing. So they give you an account manager. That account manager then has to book these meetings with the different departments to get things going for the different products that you're buying. There's a lot of red tape. We had to become a regulated Mvno. In fact, that part is kind of funny to me because we tried to add ourselves on Wikipedia as an Mvno and we were deleted because nobody believed we really existed. But if you do go look in the FCC filings, you will see that we are listed as an Mvno as some of the filings now. We are registered in many of the states for offering either landline or wireless services. But you have to do that, and then you have
That's
to
a
provide.
lot of work, actually.
Sorry?
That in its own right is a lot of work.
Correct. It took us almost 6 months to complete the paperwork and contracts. We had to show registrations in 38 of 50 states, I think, that you have to provide to them. You have to get a lawyer and legal presence in a lot of those states ongoing. You have to deal with the taxes as well.
And
And
then
then
one firm that has offices
But-
and attorneys
well, that's
everywhere.
effectively what we ended up doing. But it took us, even with that, all they're doing is pushing the paperwork along and asking you all the questions. So you still end up answering questions for every state. And some of these states, like, I kid you not, it's so clear that some legislator passed a law for a tax or something and then dumped it on some poor admin who wanted nothing to do with it. Like the forms that you fill out, some of them don't make any sense. Like grammatically, they don't even make sense. It looks like somebody typed them on a typewriter and photocopied them for the last 20 years. So it's not exactly the most efficient process. And then once you do that, you have to actually do the interconnects and the interop. And that takes 3 to 6 months, depending on how quick you are. And if your cross-connect company shows up on time and their cross-connect company shows up on time, it's like ordering cable. Hey. And then so the steps were the legalese stuff, the cross connects and the integration. We then had to get the software testing. You then had to integrate the API and the web services portion to do all that control that I just showed you. And then the other thing we really didn't realize, which is why it took us so long to get this launched, is this stuff changes every 3 to 6 months. So like last month, there were 3 new APIs released that we had to switch to, in order to keep the activations working still. Last week, there was a wrench thrown in how activations work, so now we got to change it again. As the new models of the phones come out, they're upgrading their towers. You basically have to stay in step with them. So it is a lot of work. It's probably cost us, I would argue, somewhere in the realm of $250,000 at this point for all the work, maybe 300 in the last few years. It might even be higher than that, actually, if you factor in some of the data center costs. But it's somewhere around there. They charge you setup fees for each service. So I said that there were 4 products we bought. So there's a $25,000 charge per product kind of deal, and then the monthly charges for those products. It's expensive. And that was what we wanted to do. Is we realized that anyone else trying to do this is going to run into all that, or they're going to have to cheap out and kind of do it in a not so great way. So the theory was, if we just did it properly and made it multi-tenant and white labelable for everyone, then hopefully nobody has to do that. And it was funny, the Sprint wholesale team was on board with this. They were like, yeah, we know our own processes take people forever, and so we'll only take really large deals, but it means anyone who's got sub 10,000 devices isn't going to come to us. So they didn't have an option, and now we kind of are giving them that option. They actually have changed our role officially to what's called an MVNE, which is a mobile virtual network enabler. And we enable other companies to be MVNOs. That's actually our official title with them.
That's how you were able to do the resale stuff.
That's correct. Yep. And so we have white label abilities in our contracts now, which is unusual as well. They don't normally give you that.
Yeah. How does roaming work?
It doesn't. I turned it off. It is included. It's really expensive. One of the fallacies about roaming is, oh, T-Mobile lets you roam. Oh, whoever lets you roam. Yeah. Those companies bury all those numbers and statistics. They are paying another carrier some ridiculous rate. They might have negotiated a discount or something reciprocal, but it doesn't change the fact that when you roam, the carriers are paying something expensive to someone else, and they don't like it. So we get those raw rates. And one of the problems, 2 problems we have with roaming. One of the ways that these big carriers protect themselves when they enable roaming is they make you sign a contract and they do a credit check. One of the reasons they do that is because if you abuse roaming, they will send you the bill and they will try to collect that from you. We are prepay. You put a credit card in and you're off to go. We're comfortable with that because the feeds we get from Sprint are 5 minutes or less behind, and you can't do a tremendous amount of damage anyway in 5 minutes. I mean, you can as the speeds get up there, but not too horrible. But roaming can sometimes take 24 hours for us to get the data from the other carrier about what data you've used, which potentially in 24 hours.
When you're talking about international, it could be all the way up to a month.
It could be millions of dollars for a single subscriber abusing it. So we literally can push a button to turn it on. We don't. If somebody wanted to do prepay, a credit check, and put a deposit down, then I would absolutely do it. Every time we've brought it up to somebody, they've said, well, why don't I try it without roaming to see if Sprint's really, okay now? And when they've gotten the phone and they've used it, they're like, oh, I don't have any problems. I don't care about roaming. The other problem we have with Sprint, which is the same problem we have with Verizon, it is a CDMA-based network, which means most countries are turning off or don't have CDMA, which means the native Sprint card and authentication won't usually work when you roam. A lot of these phones now have dual modems in them with GSM as well. To be honest, it's easier to pop the SIM card out and just buy a local one, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper if you're traveling. So I know that doesn't fit for everyone, but if you're talking about going to Europe once a year, go into our portal, take your mobile number, forward it using VoIP rate minutes, which are cheap, your temporary European number while you travel, and turn it off when you get back. And you can forward it once you're out there because it's all web-based, so it's super easy to do. Until eSIMs come out, which would be awesome, which are compatible, that would be my best suggestion. We're probably not going to try and tackle international roaming on the Sprint stuff. It's too challenging.
So basically the reason why I asked about the eSIM is because what I do is I have Google Fi, and I have Google Fi on an eSIM. Yep. And then I go into, as soon as I hit the street and see a Vodafone store or a T-Mobile store,
combine them.
Yeah, I buy it and then I switch over because they rate limit on Fi, but I'm not even sure they really do anymore. I haven't looked recently. It doesn't.
So I have to be honest, those things have gotten so sophisticated, and the firmware stuff is now so built into the phones. You might be able to do that with these phones. They may not know that you're doing it. Like it might just switch. So I would encourage you to try it. I know that you can, like on my S7, if you took out the SIM card and popped in a new one, it would reboot and have a connection fit. On the S9, I can flip a SIM card while the phone's still up, and it just notices and then reprovisions as soon as you put the next card in, which I suspect is effectively the same thing you're doing with some of these eSIMs or some of these little adapters you can buy that attach to the back of the phone that let you switch between 2 SIM cards, and the phone will just pick it up and switch over to GSM, and then you switch back to Sprint, that's back on CDMA. So most likely you can achieve that. We just really haven't had the time or, frankly, patience to mess with it at this point, and I would highly encourage someone to play with that if they could figure it out. It's a great question.
It's built into the settings in Android now.
Yeah, where you can switch the SIM card, right? Or you can switch your carrier.
Yeah.
It says, yeah.
You could swap them on the fly. You just select which one, and it just happens like that.
Yep. So again, the problem we have with Sprint is if they don't recognize the ICC ID on the SIM, they won't accept it. So if it's on the eSIMs, I don't believe that they'll take those fancy new ones that are programmable. But there are some adapters out there that literally you put 2 physical SIM cards in, and they're super thin. They fit behind your case, and then you just put in a SIM card into the phone itself, and then there's actually firmware on it that lets you switch it from the phone. You don't have to like hit a switch or anything, and it behaves the same way, even though you're technically not using a real eSIM. You're using 2 physical SIM cards.
That's some cool stuff. You should be really proud. You've done some great things.
It's a fun tool. I wish more people would use it. So yeah, if you're interested in this stuff, basically the main thing, we used to not allow people to sign up with the service without a minimum because there was so much support. A lot of the tools you're seeing now were not really done. Oh, I forgot one other piece. The big reason that we used to require, I don't know if we can get that screen share back up. A big reason we used to require a commitment with us is because the first thing people would do was a port, and the port required you to contact our support team, and our support team had to manually do it, which cost us labor money, and then it was a pain in the neck. We have automated the porting as well, and actually this ties into the site. I've lost my authentication. The porting actually ties into the the cellular porting systems they use, not the Newstar landline stuff. So these ports happen usually within 2 to 3 hours. So basically, you go in here.
The regulations for it, right? For mobile.
This will be done within an hour or two if you get a valid port success request in here. You basically activate the device, and then you say,
"That's always the key."
Yeah. And then you say, I want to move my old number onto this current phone, and here's my account number with my old carrier and password and my social security number and whatever, and hit submit. It'll kick you back an estimated time of the port completion, and then your phone will just reset with your actual phone number, and you'll be good to go, and your port is done. So the reason I bring that up is you can basically do everything in here without contacting our support team now. So we used to require a pretty strict, heavy minimum in order to get going with this because there was such a high labor cost for us, and we've kind of eliminated that for the most part because you can use our forums to ask general questions that are non-urgent, and then you can use this tool to basically manage all your other issues, and it basically is pretty reliable and doesn't really have many problems, so it just works. Make sense?
So do we have any more questions from the audience?
I've got one more question for you, Darren.
Sure.
Let's say, so anybody watching today that wants to play with this, and they don't necessarily want to do a full Kazoo setup and everything up, do you guys have a service that they can just go sign up for and say, hey, I want to get 2 or 3 phones to play with, and we'll just let it ride 2600 hertz?
We are trying to build a self-service portal where you can just sign up. Right now, you still have to call us to activate the account, but we're getting there. I would say within the next few months, I would expect you can just go to a web page and turn this on, punch in a credit card number. That is effectively what you can do today, except our sales rep has to create the account for you. There's no front page like a store where you can start. But then, yes, my expectation would be throw a few phones on there. We let you play with it, and you're off to the races. We have a bunch of people testing it right now, actually, because we've started doing that.
And are you guys providing phones for people to use on this yet, or is it?
Well far away from any procurement, shipping, exchanges, returns, damaged shipments, lost shipments. I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole. So our eBay. I mean, look, you can get most people who want a real phone they're going to rely on. They might as well they're most likely getting a Samsung or an Apple or a Google device these days. Just go to those websites and buy them. It's simpler. Just have them shipped to your home. And then if you're bringing something old or want something off eBay, then just get the serial number before you buy it, punch it into that validator, or make sure it comes with a 30-day return policy in case it doesn't validate for some reason. And then you just use it. So I don't think we would be adding any value in shipping phones. I think we would probably be causing problems shipping phones, to be honest.
One of the things to note is earlier you mentioned Republic Wireless, right?
Yep.
And so one of the big problems with I only used Republic Wireless literally for 1 month. Like I set it up and I was in and I was out instantly. And the reason why was because they used a bandwidth DID as their primary phone number.
That's right. So we do not do that.
Yeah, and so which in turn turns into active. If you need to like verify your phone number, anything you do these days, like if you have a bank account, every time you log into a service, it's not going to go to a VoIP-enabled DID. It's only going to go to a real mobile number, and that's why I asked that earlier. That's really important, and it's a true testament that the fact that you have a Sprint SPID in conjunction with call flow. I mean, that's something that's really cool. I would use that for sure. Like for sure.
I hope you do. That's actually I agree with that. There are definitely a couple drawbacks. I don't run into them that often. Like we don't tie into any of the pay services. There was like one time I wanted to like donate to the Red Cross by texting this number. We don't have any of the back billing systems in place to do that kind of stuff. So any of the premium services you can't use with like short codes. You can still text a short code. It just has to be one that's not trying to charge you on the back end. What else? And then the roaming thing. It's probably the only two things I really run into. And then the other obvious problem that we run into a lot is now all these carriers are pitching unlimited everything. And probably half the people on this call are heavy users since you're all phone geeks. So, it's probably not unheard of to run 10, 20 gigs for some of you. You're actually paying for that amount here, whereas with Sprint's retail service or Verizon's retail service, they're averaging you out with grandma who uses half a gig a month and figuring that between you and the normal user, they don't really care that the few people are outliers on the heavy usage. Whereas, and you're basically getting a free ride. But I also think if you look at what's happening in the US versus Europe, a lot of folks in Europe are used to, you buy what you use. And I think that some of that stuff may come back here, where throttling returns or T-Mobile caused everybody to drop their prices, basically. And then Sprint, to try and gain subscribers, recently brought back a real unlimited plan, and so did T-Mobile to some degree. But I still think those are fads. I think we'll end up back at you pay for usage. That's how the whole industry is based. And if that happens, then this will become a really good option again because it's close to the wholesale price anyway.
I mean, I pay per usage on my plan.
There you go. So
and the thing is,
remember this is
as long as you have Wi-Fi connected. I mean, you don't burn a lot of data. Like I remember looking at my utilization. I'll do like 60 gigs a month on my phone, but only like 2 or 3 gigs is actually mobile. And so it's all about like taking and creating good rules. So like I have an application called Tasker. And so the second I'm in the car, it shuts down Wi-Fi, right? And then the second I'm out, it turns it back on.
Well, so, and in that regard, like if it's only 2 gigs, so we charge, I think, $3.50 to have the phone active, I think, or $3.99, and then it's $3 a month for unlimited SMS, MMS, and then it's $9 a gig, I think. So your bill would be what, $26, I think, if I did that math right, something like that, 28. So it's $4 plus $3, so it's 27. There you go. So you'd have a $27 bill. So
right around the 2,600 number.
Yeah, that's true.
It'd be $26.
Right. It's people like Ken that I'd probably never want on the service because he's going to run up 2,000 gigs of data somehow.
Actually, I'm not that bad on the mobile usage. Now, my son, on the other hand, yeah, he's like 15 gigs in a week.
So it's fun stuff. We invite people to play with it, and we invite FreeSWITCH users to route that stuff to their FreeSWITCH boxes and play with it too. I think that's the call control stuff is really fun. So
I'm speaking of this, Darren, of FreeSWITCH users and everything. So you demoed actually logging the handset into the FreeSWITCH server effectively.
Yep.
Is it just as easy when you're setting up your DID routing to have that routed to your FreeSWITCH server before? Obviously.
Correct. The DID routing, I think actually one of the problems we have right now is the DID routing also still needs to be configured on the back end, if I'm not mistaken. But you give us an IP address to route all of your inbound DIDs to, just like you would with a regular carrier when you set up interop. And then we'll take all of your inbound Sprint calls and they'll just go to your DID. They come to you off a different IP address so that you know it's an inbound call for your ACLs. And then you would just add our IP address in the ACL and you'd route it to your basic FreeSWITCH dial plan just like you would a carrier. It literally works the same way as if you were signing up for a VoIP carrier.
And so the inbound, is it coming from, it's coming from you, or is it different IP because it's coming from you or because it's coming from Sprint?
It comes from us. Remember that Sprint's tie-in to us is on a private network, so we don't have a way to tell Sprint to go directly to you. I actually would love to do that, but we can't.
Okay.
And then we would pass it to you. And then to make things simpler, we decided to, because of ACLs and verse auth, we just said, most people aren't going to set this up properly unless the IPs are different. So we just made it separate.
That's cool.
Cool. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming in today. I mean, it's really cool stuff.
And I hope people play with it. So let us know if you're interested.
So
Ken, back to you.
Yeah, but before we let Darren get off screen, Darren, is there anything else you want to get a plug in for today while you're here?
I mean, I guess I should always be plugging the other software we build that does make us a living, and plug you guys and the FreeSWITCH team for making all this possible, because technically that is what's running a lot of this, or at least a good portion of the pieces are FreeSWITCH powered. So thanks to Tony and Ken and Brian and Mike and the folks who kind of been doing this since the beginning. If you're interested in a multi-tenant switch that's kind of similar to BroadSoft in the features these days, or class 5 switch, I should say. It's not necessarily like a BroadSoft. Feel free to check out Kazoo. It's like a multi-tenant front end for FreeSWITCH that embeds Camellio and load balancing and distributed systems. And maybe we'll do a follow-up on a future ClueCon and go through the status of that. It's been around a few years. I would say that last year it really reached maturity for you can easily put on thousands of customers and probably tens of thousands of phones on a fairly easy to set up system, and you can get that actually redundant setup in, I don't know, honestly, if you run the commands that I would show, probably a day. If you knew what you were doing, maybe a few hours. So we call it a telco in a box. It was the original vision we had behind Blue Box, and it's kind of here now. And feel free to check out our website on that, 2600hertz.com or .org on the open source side, and it's free. The open source part is totally open. So encourage you to check that out and play with that, or check out mobile and play with that, or check out ClueCon and check out FreeSWITCH, and those would be my plugs.
All right, cool. Thank you, Darren.
Yep, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me on the show too.
Oh yeah, so thank you very much, Michael, for talking with Darren today.
Yeah,
also, so guys, don't forget, we'll be back here next week with some more exciting, with another exciting guest for talking about what they're working on. So be sure, if you want to check out those videos, go check out the FreeSWITCH channel on YouTube. Also, while you're there, right below the video, click that subscribe button and then click that little bell icon. That'll get you the updates on when we're going live. They'll get you notifications on who our new scheduled guests are going to be, all kinds of other fun information there. Plus, we have various videos produced by members of the FreeSWITCH team that are going up there, like Fred and Josh and all the rest of the guys. So be sure to check those out. And also, if you didn't get to make it to ClueCon, go check out the YouTube channel. There's tons of videos from this past ClueCon that are there. They're available now. So check that out. We'll see you guys next week.
You've been watching ClueCon Weekly. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central. Keep up with the latest happenings by subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or visit us at freeswitch.com.